Time to revisit Megamind. I did a video about this quite a while back, exposing it for an attack on the average man, right? And of course, this dude here, the Viali, he talks about this and gets it all wrong. He has complete lack of self-awareness about what this is about, right? Now, listen to this.
You see, if you couldn't tell already, I'm actually bald, and there's been many times over the course of my life where people have charmingly referred to me as Megamind, which is something I'm definitely not bitter about, and thoroughly enjoy.
Why did I play this first? Because I want you to keep this in mind from Viali as he talks about Hal here, tightened, right? Because if women loved men for their inner qualities, him being bald wouldn't make any difference, right? And he wouldn't be bitter, right? So keep that in mind as we play this.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 183rd episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Titan from Megamind. As you saw in the intro, Titan has been requested to be featured in a video quite a lot, and while I aim to please,
You don't even have his name spelled right. It's Titan, Titan. So why are you misspelling his name?
so here we are, discussing one of the more intriguing animation villains ever animated.
How's he intriguing? It's a simple case of a guy getting rejected and getting pissed off and taking revenge. That's not very intriguing, right? And what's worse, it's represent the average guy like you, bald man.
Young man with some less than desirable traits that are amplified by his acquisition of superpowers that transform him into a monster in a man-child's body.
Well, no, it doesn't amplify his traits. His traits are always there. He's angry at being rejected. Society has rejected him, right? And so in very much he's the victim, right? Isn't that the same as Megamind? Was not Megamind himself rejected as a child, and that's what made him a villain? Yet you don't see, I don't see you, Viali, saying that Megamind, you don't call him a man-child, do you? Why is that? Do you not realize you lacked self-awareness? You know?
Now, interestingly enough, I have a more personal relationship with this film.
Oh, yeah.
You see, if you couldn't tell already, I'm actually...
We've got past that. We got it. You're bald.
Blue hat! Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Though Hal Stewart is still Hal Stewart after he's been given superpowers by Megamind, there's an evolution in character that takes place following his transformation that almost turns him into a different person.
Oh my God. See, when these guys have to deal with their own delusions, notice they always contradict themselves. He's the same person, but he's evolved, and he's almost a different person, but he isn't.
Almost is the key word here, though, as it's more so the case that becoming Titan made it so Hal's more negative traits became much more apparent. Hal, before his transformation, was an overweight and awkward nerd, one whose personality we only really got to see through his repeated attempts at gaining Roxanne's affections.
So his personality was that he's awkward, right? That's his big negative trait. He was awkward, right?
And while there is a moment where Hal hints to us that he's kind of a creep when he tells her he'll be watching her like a dingo watches a baby, he mostly seems like an inept love-struck fool who doesn't know the first thing about speaking to women.
So if that's the case, then how is he such a bad guy then? See that guy? So, hey, he's just a love-struck fool who doesn't know, but he's the evil villain. He's the evil nice guy, right?
To his credit, Hal actually seems to understand to a certain degree that he's the one at fault when it comes to wooing Roxy, as he does have a breakdown after she rejects his invitation to party at his house, stating that he's stupid for thinking girls like bouncy houses, because girls like clowns, of course, which is something you wouldn't expect from what sort of person Hal is often referred to as a nice guy. But what...
Yeah. He says girls aren't interested in low status activities, which he's 100% correct in, isn't he? Right?
Is a nice guy. And why is Hal often considered one? Well, the term can mean many things, but in
No, it could mean many things, but it means only one thing. Nice guy just means low status, like you, bald man, like you, Viali, right? That's why'd you cry when you said, "Oh, I'm bald." Aren't the girls all over you because you're such a great guy? Right. No, nice guy just means low status man. Women don't like low status men. They don't like men anyway, because if they did, they wouldn't go for status. But they really have contempt for men who haven't achieved anything. He hasn't achieved any status, right? And so he's a nice guy. That's what it means. It's women's shallowness. You know, that's what it is.
this context, a nice guy is used to negatively refer to a man who is self-absorbed, self-pitying, and generally unpleasant to be around, who believes that they are just a nice person that everyone else is out to get, and by virtue of simply treating women.
Well, that's quite the propaganda. Man crying over the fact that he balded young. Right. So you're going to spread this false propaganda about the average guy, these poor suckers who try their luck and get rejected, and then they get angry they get rejected, right? And that really shows you that they're a nice guy. You see a good man when he gets rejected, he just absorbs it and takes it, right? He takes the abuse.
Nicely, they believe they are somehow owed their affections due to said niceness, but in reality,
No. They expect some kind of reciprocation, right? Right. So, Viali, if you're nice to a stranger on the street, he spits in your face, you get upset. You say, why did you do that for? Right? So notice the double standards. Guys like you understand it if it's between the same gender, right? But if it's romantic, case between men and women, all of a sudden, everything should be reversed. Men shouldn't get angry at being treated badly, right? Are you including the cases where uh, a guy gets online and a woman shows him some attention and then ghost him, right? Something that is purposely abusive, you know? Is he a nice guy if he gets upset?
the nice guy is only superficially nice, as it's often the case that the nice guy will show their true ugly self once they're rejected by a woman, blaming them for their perceived promiscuity, stupidity, or malice, and lashing out at them in place of acceptance or introspection, so they might learn why they rejected them, not why they're obviously harlots for refusing their advances.
I do agree with it. But Violite, you're no different than them. If you had a girlfriend or a woman and she was sleeping around with another guy, you get pissed off, right? You want your one and only to be your one and only. You don't like men either. You don't like the idea of sharing a woman with another man, even though it's harmless. So how are you any different from Hal here? Nice guy?
Now, how someone develops into a nice guy is central to understanding Hal, and typically one develops nice guy traits once they develop an interest in the opposite sex, which
So what you're saying is little boys are actually fully human, right? It's when guys get interested in opposite sex, they find out the opposite sex isn't interested in them. Right. They're interested in their status. Hey, this character right here, what's her name? Roxanne. Who's she show interest in? This guy who's kind of like her boyfriend, she doesn't really care about him. She cares about Metroman and Megamind, right? The two top guys. The guys the highest status, the hero and the thug, right? By the way, Megamind has status. Everyone takes him seriously because he threatens the city, right? So he has status, and that's who Roxanne shows interest in. So it's not really the quality of the man she's interested in, is it? And also, what qualities do Roxanne have? Everyone wants to be with her, right? There's nothing special about her, right? What has she done through the entire flick that says, oh, this woman has such great character? Nothing. So she's accepted for who she is, and the men aren't, right? Because Viali, men want to be with women, and women don't want to be with men. That's what this is about. And that's why you contradict yourself all the time when you're talking about this subject.
which is to say in adolescence, or during middle or high school. So there is a logical path to follow when trying to imagine what Hal's early life was like, and how he developed into the man we see in the film. But we're actually given a couple indicators that allow us to make some more solid inferences about what Hal's childhood and adolescence was like. In a scene where Megamind is training Hal, Hal gives himself a wedgie and remarks that it doesn't even hurt, which indicates to us that Hal has experienced the more painful variety of wedgie before, which
So he was rejected by his peers as well. So this isn't just about romance, is it? Right? So this guy has never had any positive reinforcement in his life. So he actually owes his society nothing. You know, your relationship with society has to be reciprocal. If society treats you as a villain, you become the villain because you are not all powerful. You don't have a choice. That's why if you have the villain, or I should say, if you have the rejected person remain a good person, like the Incredible Hulk. That's why the Incredible Hulk is a hero. We call it heroic, you know, that you still care about other people, even though you are continually rejected. But to not be a nice guy, in your mind, Viali, would mean that every guy would have to be a hero. To be a not nice guy is to be incredibly heroic and just take all the abuse. If society rejects you, just, you know, be good to society anyway, right? So you're pushing slave mentality, right? Just know your place. When you're in the field picking the cotton, just be happy that you're picking the cotton. If someone comes and whips your back, just say, yeah, I deserve this, right?
confirms for us something that we could have only guessed, that Hal was likely bullied when he was younger. Now, along
Titan. See, that's how it's spelled. So again, why are you misspelling his name?
with this notion, when you take into account a specific component of Hal's personality, that being his use of gifts and imagined connections to try to gain the affections of Roxanne, I think we have a good idea of who Hal was when he was in Shul. Hal Stewart
You mean how he learned that women went for status? Of course, guys give gifts. I mean, I bet this guy's paying for the dinner that he's with Roxanne with, right? I mean, that's how it's done. I bet that's if you go on a date with a woman, Viali, I suspect you're paying for things. So where would Hal get this idea, right?
was the awkward and chubby kid who just wanted to fit in. A kid who wasn't content to be a nerd who hung out with other nerds.
Now, this is where really I get irritated. There's nothing in this movie that suggests that he had nerd friends that he didn't want to hang with. Nothing. There's nothing for you to draw that conclusion.
But one that was always trying to gain the recognition of the popular kids. A kid who would have tried to buddy up to the captain of the football team with humor, praise, and offers of bouncy houses and dip back at
This is bullshit. I'm getting past this. There's no reason for him to come to that conclusion. Not.
people. Hal believed he was rejected due to the absence of these qualities within him, along with the fact that he was just simply too nice, and inherently better than them. A boy who perceived that the people he was trying to buddy up to were just cruel and ignorant losers, who couldn't see the great person right in front of them, because
Well, he was rejected because of the person he was, wasn't he? So isn't that correct? If they liked him for himself, they would just he'd be accepted, right? So yeah, it's all about status. Now, I want to jump ahead to this. This is how much he contradicts himself. We'll jump ahead to uh, Metroman here.
bodies have a lot to do with this. If we look at a traditional superhero, like Metroman, and compare him to Hal, as Hal in many ways is the anti-Metroman, it's easy to see why. Metroman was raised to be disciplined, compassionate, and ever mindful of justice and the greater good.
What told you that? I saw this film. There was no scene where his parents were teaching him anything. He was simply accepted. They show him as in kindergarten, everyone loving him because he's Superman. Metro Man isn't any different from Titan. It's just his experiences. He was accepted, Titan wasn't. They're the same guy. Viali, you don't know what you're talking about.
And while Metroman is narcissistic and egotistical, that ego
What was that? He's narcissistic and egotistical. This is what I'm talking about with the contradictions. Back that train up.
And while Metroman is narcissistic and egotistical, that ego actually helped facilitate his evolution into a superhero, as in
So these negative traits of narcissism made him a hero. How would that be? Right? Your negative traits of being completely selfish made you a good person. Do you realize just how contradicting that is? Oh my God. Like Viola, you're making a complete fool of yourself because you're avoiding the simple truth. Why is Megamind a villain? Because he was rejected by society. He turned out to be a good guy, right? Why? Because he was accepted by society. He became the hero. But he was rejected when he was a kid, so that made him a villain. Metroman was accepted by society in general, so he became the hero, even though he's narcissistic, right? So Megamind is actually no different from Hal, right? So how come you consider Megamind not a nice guy? How come shouldn't he heroically embrace society even though society rejected him? How come you don't see Megamind as a nice guy? Huh?
in truth, the moral ideals of a superhero may not have been a priority for the young Metroman had he not been fed mountains of praise that steered him towards pleasing others, so that
Exactly. He might not have been the hero if he wasn't wildly accepted by everybody. Because his personal character was actually non-heroic. So this has nothing to do, bald man, with a guy's inner self. I mean, this film really exposes human nature. All right. Oh, God. Now, here comes the ultimate denial, the denial of female nature.
and girls are attracted to men like Metroman, and not Hal, is because they have certain traits and characteristics that automatically cause women to gravitate towards them. And that can certainly be the case when you're dealing with more superficial women, but they're the exception, not the rule.
They're the exception, not the rule, right? Really. Then Viali, how come you cried over the fact that you were bald, right? If women were turned on by bald men, you'd be happy. There'd be guys shaving their heads, right? I mean, how come there's so many lonely guys on the dating apps listening to dating gurus, right? How come? If this woman who was shallow was the exception to the rule. Again, I point to you, Roxanne, she's loved by everybody. What are her inner qualities that are so attractive to men? Nothing. She has no reason. She's accepted by society, 100%. So just like Metro Man, she has a reason to be happy, right? And of course, he's going to victim blame because he has a cart before the horse.
Social or lifestyle choices instilled within him. And when we're given our first glimpse into Hal's apartment, it becomes readily apparent that he's lazy, undisciplined, and selfish. A man who's content to live in filth and eat junk food for every meal, that likely spends all of his time glued to a computer or TV screen.
You see, the cart before the horse. He lives like that because he's depressed, right? The guy who gets rejected gets depressed, and so he stops taking care of himself and his surroundings, right? But he of course says the opposite. He's a lazy man. He's so lazy that he shows up to work every day, you know, bathed and showered and fully dressed. Hey, Viali, bald man, how come Hal has a job then if he's so lazy and undisciplined, right? I bet if Roxanne decided to come to his apartment, he'd clean the place up, just like you, right? So again, it's so typical, right? Viali is a nice guy, doesn't realize he's a nice guy, wants to say that all these nice guys are bad people. These other men are bad people. But I'm the one good guy, right? The one good guy, and women love me for who I am, and so I'm going to cry because I'm bald. This is pathetic.